The agitators are throwing firebombs and Molotov cocktails, lighting vehicles ablaze, and attempting to infiltrate and occupy federal buildings wearing armor and face shields. The best money can buy, somebody's financing it. We're going to find out through Pam Bondi and Department of Justice who it is. They're already on it. Who's financing all this equipment? Very professional.
Joining us now is Oversight Committee member of Florida Congresswoman Luna. Congresswoman, looking at this chaos, who's funding it and why are they funding it?
So it's actually being funded by a billionaire by the name of Neville Singham. He's actually funding a group called the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which if you look online, they are a communist organization. What they're doing is they are using Hispanic Americans the way that BLM used Black Americans during these riots, and frankly, the way that Code Pink, which is also funded by the CCP, is using Palestinians. So what they're trying to do is they're using this to usher in Marxism. But it's important to note that actually when you find and you follow the money trail, Mr. Singham is actually largely funded by the Communist Chinese Party. So House Oversight has issued and will be sending a letter this Friday with all members of Oversight calling Mr. Singham to testify before Congress. If he does not appear and does not provide documents, he will then be held in contempt of Congress, and he will be prosecuted by the Department of Justice. We are not playing. This is a different administration. We have the Department of Justice, and if you interfere with American politics and are a foreign agent, you will be held accountable. We are also assisting, and we already have the receipts. I can tell you that there is significant financial money trails. All you have to do is follow the money. Remember, so Neville Singham is actually financing the LA riots, but there's also other groups coming in. But they have different ideological perspectives, some backed by Soros that are globalists, and then obviously the Marxist organizations. But remember, this is a color revolution, right? They're using these immigrants as a guise for their real objective and goal here. And frankly, it's nothing different than what happened in the Summer of Love during the BLM riots right before the election. They're doing the same thing before the midterms, and Democrats are trying to get the Hispanic vote, so that's why they're using Mexican flags.
Well, it was a heck of a thing to see the heads of the biggest teachers unions in the United States standing up there just a few days ago. Not worried about educating our kids, but worried about keeping illegals in this country. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, we also want to get, well, and also people flying flags from their, home country. If you love it so much, go back, right? But Congresswoman, I want to get you on this. I want to talk to you about Christy Walton. So she's a Walmart heiress. She has been calling for June 14th, this Saturday, to be a No Kings protest across the country. Congresswoman, we've already seen the violence in Los Angeles right now. So what is she really calling for here?
Well, look, I'm the first elected Mexican American to the House of Representatives from the state of Florida. So clearly they are not listening to what Hispanic Americans want, which largely voted in favor of President Trump's policy on immigration, because we understand what happens to our communities. People like Miss Walton, who are leftist liberals that have been basically spoon-fed their wealth and opulence, have no idea what the impacts are on the immigrant communities that come here illegally, that are being hired, not actually given access to the American dream. And what I would say is people like her are actually responsible for some of the impact negatively that the American people have had to go through in regards to people that have been coming here criminally that have been hurting Americans. So actually, you saw today that Walmart issued a statement distancing themselves from what I would say is the black sheep of the Walmart family. And what I would also go forward and a step further and say is that these left-wing organizations, these are the same people that when Governor DeSantis sent illegals to Martha's Vineyard, they waved them and gave them sandwiches and said, see you later, after they called in the National Guard to remove them. These are fake. This is a fake outcry. They're using minorities, and I'm not here for it.
So what are they doing differently in Florida? Joining us now is the state's governor, Ron DeSantis. Hi, Governor. Good to see you tonight. Now, I understand you offered Gavin Newsom help in handling his unrest. I understand that didn't go over too well.
Yeah, they accused us of trying to, quote, escalate. But I can tell you what escalates the situation is being a sanctuary state. What escalates the situation is tolerating the looting and the rioting and the burning of these vehicles and attacks on law enforcement. And we do it just the opposite in Florida. When the 2020 riots were happening in Minneapolis, California, all these other places, we didn't let that happen in Florida. But we also recognize, like, this is what the left does. So we did landmark anti-rioting legislation. So in Florida, if you riot, if you loot, if you engage in any type of mob violence, You are not going to be treated like they treat you in Portland, where you get a slap on the wrist and then just get put right back on the street. If you do that in Florida, you're going to jail and you're going to be held accountable. And we've had, when we did that legislation, people said, oh, they don't want protests. And we've had a lot of protests on various issues. Heck, Laura, every time I get out of bed, somebody's protesting things that I'm doing here in Florida. But that happens, and it's peaceful. And the minute you cross that line, that's when we will spring into action. And I know they're trying to do stuff this weekend all across the United States. And I don't know exactly what they have planned for Florida, but I'll tell you this, we're ready. Our local law enforcement's ready. Our state agencies are poised. And even our National Guard, if need be, will be there to quell any violence or any unrest if people make that dumb decision to do it. But I got to tell you, we've dealt with this pretty effectively in the past. I mean, one of the things they're doing in Los Angeles, yes, you see the looting, you see all that. They also just take over streets. Look, if you don't have a permit to take over streets, you can't just interrupt traffic. The Hamas people tried to do this when they were doing that a year or so ago. They tried it in Miami. They were kicked off the road in 13 minutes. They tried it in Central Florida. Our highway patrol got them out of there in 11 minutes. So you're going to be held accountable. The inmates are not going to run the asylum. So it's a bad decision to try to pull that nonsense in Florida.
But, Governor, people have to understand a lot of this is really nothing to do with immigration. This is to do with destabilization of the country. The groups organizing this are all about that. The migrants are just pawns in all this. I really don't think they care about the construction sites or the fry cooks. They don't care about those people, just like they didn't care about George Floyd.
Yeah, look, I think that I do think the left is passionately committed to open borders. I think they are offended that President Trump would actually do his oath of office and enforce the law. But I think you're right in the sense that this is just the latest pretext. It was the Hamas stuff a year and a half ago. It was the BLM back in 2020. And so they are going to find something to be able to go, and they're funded, and we know these Soros groups are funded. And that's one of the things we're looking at in Florida. Any of these groups that are trying to dox ICE agents, as you say, Laura, that's not about immigration. That's about trying to destabilize law enforcement operations in this country. We're going to come down hard on them if they're interfering or threatening our law enforcement personnel. But these are well-funded. This is the left in action, and it is part of a larger agenda than just immigration.
All right, Governor, thank you very much.
You're a fool blaming Trump. What are you doing for this destruction of these animals destroying Los Angeles? Are you there talking calmly with them, you fool? They would burn you down like they're burning the cars and the American flag with no regard for humanity. This is not about Trump. This is about protecting the people from these animals and criminals trying to destroy us. And our police force, are they supposed to stand there, let rocks hit them and kill them? Who's going to save them? You? You're a disgrace. You're nothing but a lying dog for the hopes of becoming the president one day.
Agitator. The agitator stood in the square shouting slogans to stir up the crowd. Ablaze. Several buildings were set ablaze during the riot. Infiltrate. The group tried to infiltrate law enforcement to gather intelligence. Usher in. This law will usher in a new era of reform. Contempt. He spoke with open contempt for the court's authority. Undergo. The city had to undergo months of unrest and recovery. Black sheep. He's considered the black sheep of the family because of his criminal record. Slap on the wrist. The vandals only got a slap on the wrist and were quickly released. Spring into action. The police sprang into action the moment the protest turned violent. Quell. The government deployed troops to quell the uprising. Pretext. He left the meeting early on the pretext of a family emergency. Dox. Hackers threatened to dox the journalist for exposing their scheme.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.